Let's talk about piles and poles. If you're building a deck this summer, it is going to be one of the first things you need to wrap your head around. I'm Josh, a builder here in New Zealand, and I've teamed up with BCITO to help you better understand the building process. In this video here, we're going to talk about the types of piles and the different ways those piles are used. Then we'll talk about setting out those piles and how to do that efficiently and successfully. And stick around to the end of the video where I'll talk about how mastering this phase of the build sets the rest of your job up for success. First up, what are the difference between piles and poles? Essentially, poles are timber tree trunks, or think power poles. They are anywhere from 150 mils to 350 mils. They're SED, that means small end diameter, and they will be used in structural elements of the build, usually on sloping sites where the land drops away and we want to build a flat floor. Poles can also come up past the floor line and start to form the structure of the building. They can then support wall framing and roof framing. Think a timber pole shed is a good example of this. Moving back to piles, there's two shapes. Square is a minimum 125 by 125, comes in a variety of sizes from 600 mils all the way through to 3 meters, or you could use round piles. These need to be a minimum of 140 mil round. Both of these will be treated to withstand ground contact. And if you've watched my other videos, you'll know that's H5 treatment. Now that we've established the difference between piles and poles and the two shapes of piles, let's talk about the different types of piles and when you may use them. Starting off with a braced pile. Now the reason it's called a braced pile, drum roll please, is because you're going to connect a brace to it. In 3604, that's the building code, section 6.6, and the following two sections, it shows you how to connect the pile. The pile needs to be at least 350 in the ground and the hole needs to be at least 450, is the way I'm interpreting this drawing. But if you think I'm wrong, you can correct me in the comments below. And it also shows you how to connect the brace. It shows you the brace angle. It shows you the lowest point on the brace needs to be a minimum of 150 mils out of the ground. You can only have two braces fixed at the bottom of one pile. The braces need to be at right angles to each other. And you can only have one brace at the top of each pile. 3604 will also help you work out in what situations you need a brace pile and how many of them you need. So obviously braced piles are to provide not only vertical support, but horizontal support. This is really important the higher up you get out of the ground. If you're building a 300 mil deck, I probably would not worry about it. But every timber subfloor we build will include an element of bracing. Moving on to the next type of pile is ordinary piles. These are placed a minimum of 200 mils into the ground and they are required to have a concrete footing, and the maximum height they're allowed to be out of the ground is 3 meters. Bearing in mind that if you're building over 1 meter, you need a full barrier, and if you're building over 1.5 meters, you need a consent. It's important to note they are called ordinary because they exist solely to carry vertical loads. If you're building a deck, the majority of your piles will be ordinary. One thing to note though, you need to dig down to good ground. How do you know when it's good ground? Well, you either get an engineer in, or one trick an engineer taught me is you get a piece of 12 mil rebar and you need to be able to push it, and it shouldn't go any more than 50 mils without a huge amount of force. If you get the rebar and you push on it and it sinks more than 100 mils, you need to cut that 100 mils out. Obviously, again, use your discretion. If you're building a dwelling that someone's gonna live in, then make sure it's all legit. If you're building a small deck, 400 mils off the ground, don't overkill it. One other important thing to note is all of these piles require at least 100 mils of concrete cover under the pile. What I got taught, the reason for this is so that the pile doesn't punch through the dirt and lose all of its stability. It has a nice solid footing to stand on. A nice trick I got taught is that you can pour this 100 mils first as well. Moving on to anchor piles. But before I do, a shocking stat. Only 20% of you have subscribed to NZ Builder. Guys, what's going on? The other 80% of you are missing out on getting notified about amazing videos like this. If you're one of those, go ahead, click subscribe, help us out. It really does encourage content like this. So moving on to anchor piles. In this drawing here, figure 6.9, you can see that the pile hole is a minimum of 900 mil into clear ground with a 350 mil square hole, or it's important to note for all of these, you can drill a round hole, minimum 400, and the pile itself goes into the hole 800 mils with 100 mils of concrete at the bottom. And an anchor pile can only be a maximum of 600 mils out of the ground. The whole idea of an anchor is in its name. It is a big structural weight. And so I suppose that if it's any higher than 600 mils, you end up with this long lever that defeats the purpose of the anchor. So they resist both horizontal and vertical loads, and they do this without the need for additional bracing. Usually they're in the corners and they are real fun to dig a real deep hole. That was a fun part of my apprenticeship. The very last type of pile is a cantilever-driven pile. Cantilever piles are driven round timber poles with a maximum length of 3.6 meters. Maximum height they can come out of the ground is 1.2 meters, and the minimum depth is at least 900 mils into gravel or 1.2 meters into other soil types. Cantilevered piles can then also be used as brace piles. Basically, they're just driven piles. And we've used these on a number of jobs, not only to do timber subfloors, but where we need to give structural integrity to a concrete foundation. So now that you understand the different shapes and types of piles, we can talk about setting out your piles. So first things first, before you even do any work on site, you should have a drawing or a plan to follow. Now, it doesn't have to be rocket science, and this could be as simple as a single A4 with marked out dimensions. But what you want to make sure you know before you even touch the earth is the spacing of the piles, the size of the piles, the depth of the piles. If you're building a structure or a house that someone's going to use and live in, obviously you're going to have a consented set of plans, something like this. What I'd be looking for on a plan like this is the spacing of the piles, the number of piles, the type of piles. You can see on this plan here is showing us where all our braced piles are. Basically, even if you're building a little deck, you should draw something up. Once you've got your drawing, get some string. Honestly, a builder's best friend. String lines are run between the profile boards at each end of the structure. Builders use these as a guide to mark the location of the outer edge of what you're building. We can then use this to do things like mark out excavation. We can use this to mark out all the pile holes. So often we'll run string lines and then you spray paint where everything is going. So we've set up our profiles, we've run our string lines, we've marked out our pile holes. The next thing we do is we dig them. Or you can go to the Upper Hut Hire and get a digger with an auger and drill your holes. Or you can use a post hole borer. Or you might be an apprentice and you need to get your digging certificate. I certainly got my one when I did my apprenticeship and mastered the art of digging nice square holes. Once you've dug your holes, you then rerun your string lines and you double check everything is working right. Now you can crack on with actual building. You need to lay temporary bracing and you need to lay this along the line of piles, and that gives you something to set your piles up with. You make sure that they're straight, you make sure that they're plumb, and this is your time to slow down and make sure it's all done properly. And the other thing, using your string line, make sure you're setting your piles to the right height. Remember, work backwards. You've got finished floor level, you've got your floor covering or your decking, you've then got your joists and your bearers and then your piles. But don't cut it fine. Leave yourself at least 50 to 100 mils and trim all your piles to height later. The last thing you want to do is set one of those bad boys too low and shoot yourself in the foot. So you set up all your piles, they're all straight, they're all plumb, they're all to the right height. You're now ready for concrete. Again, don't rush into this phase like a Tasmanian devil. You've just spent all that time making it mint. The last thing you want to do is be real rough and ready with the concrete and the wheelbarrow and everything ends up on the piss. Slow down, take your time, fill the holes up nice and gently, give each hole a nice vibrate or mix up with a shovel, and then double check everything. Make sure that everything is still plumb and straight. And the very last thing I do is get a hose and clean them all off. Make sure you get rid of all that splatter. Check the existing house or any other structures you've been working around. I can't reiterate enough, this phase of the build is critical to the success of the rest of your project. If you take your time and set the foundation up properly, everything else clicks together. If you rush this phase and things end up on the piss or out of place, it gets harder and harder to rectify as you continue to build. Remember, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Pause and make sure this part of the project is done right. If you or someone you know is thinking of doing a building apprenticeship, check out BCITO. I'm a BCITO apprentice. I loved it. Can't recommend them enough. This was part 1 of a 2-part video explaining timber foundations. In our next video, we'll jump into explaining bearers, joists, and the final covering that finishes off your masterpiece.